You have been practicing this introspection, focusing attention within and observing the body, how the body feels, the emotional state, and the thoughts that come to the mind. This way, to a great extent, you have been able to keep the mind calm. Today, you are going to make use of that calmness to do some thinking in the right way. So ultimately it is the thinking part, mano, that has to be cultivated when the mind is calm. So this is why in this book 1, the first book, turn to page 35. Awareness of the realities of life. So we should begin to focus on the realities of life. It is by focusing our attention on the realities of life that the calmness that you cultivate can be preserved. The ultimate aim is to maintain the calmness. That is the meaning of nirvana. Nirvana is the non-shaking of the mind. So the non-shaking can be continued only by thinking in the right way. So you should go through this, the logic of this reflection. We are biological organisms in an environment. So we have to see, as I said earlier, that when we are born, what have you been doing? Are you thinking about those things that I ask you to think about? Any problems? Any questions about what you are thinking? So it's very important to keep your mind calm and also think about this. But it's only when your mind is calm that you can reflect on the Dhamma. No questions today, huh? Huh?
Repetition or printing mistake, I don't know. This one, no?
What?
This one, and also in the last, this one, the same thing. Of page 33, reflection on A, this one, awareness of the realities
Yeah.
of life, and F, the same thing.
What is your problem?
No, it's the same, I mean, the
Huh?
repetition, is the repetition or is the printing mistake, this one, I mean, this, the last section, this one, Bhante.
What are you talking about?
No, but this one, this is mentioned here. The same thing mentioned in the last. Please.
A and F are the same, Bhante.
Huh?
He's saying that this item here,
Yeah.
A,
Yeah?
is exactly the same as this item F. Why is this repeated? A, B, C, D, E, and then F is the same as A.
Yeah. Well, this is you can't understand that, huh?
No, but I mean the same thing, I mean, in the first and the last.
What is this picture here?
Okay.
Do you see this?
Oh, but yes, okay.
Ah.
The cycle.
If you draw a circle, don't you come to the same point when you... Huh? That is how a circle works. Huh? That is the meaning of that.
He's still learning to draw circles, Bhante.
That is how circles work. You come to the same point. You see, Einstein made a statement that if you send a ray of light straight, it will come back to the same point. And so people doubted that. And they began to try an experiment when there was what is called the eclipse of the sun. You know about the eclipse of the sun? Huh? Sometimes the sunlight disappears when the moon comes and covers the sun. So they sent a ray of light at that point, and they found that it came back to the same point. So that proved what Einstein was saying. So in the same way, this circle here is a circle where you come back to the same point. So meditation has to go on in a circle. That is what it means. That if you think about the realities of life, that leads to dispassion, and the dispassion leads to compassion, compassion leads to happiness, happiness leads to tranquility, and tranquility helps understand better. And that understanding will help you to become more dispassionate. You understand? And that dispassion leads to more compassion, and the compassion leads to happiness, that leads to more tranquility, and that means you get more insight. You understand? That's how it works. That is how meditation works. It goes in a circle.
Similar to
Huh?
samsara. Similar to samsara.
Samsara.
Also in a circle.
Yeah, everything goes on in circles is the problem. So, this is why if you have been reflecting on the realities of life in this way, your mind will begin to calm down. And the more the mind calms down, the better you begin to understand. So this is the important thing. That's why you should be practicing this. That so this is why we should be practicing these things in the form of a circle.
Sangsara may go.
Huh?
Sangsara may go opposite cycle.
Yeah. That means you are going in the wrong direction also in circles. So, in circles you can go in the wrong direction as well as the right direction also goes in circles. So the important thing is to go in the right direction. So this is why you should read this Dveda Vitakka Sutra. There are these two kinds of thoughts that the Buddha was talking about. So you have not been, it looks like you have not been thinking in this way. You have to think in terms of I am subject to aging. I have not transcended aging. Now that is something that you have to meditate on that. I am subject to disease. I have not transcended disease. I am subject to death. I have not transcended death. So you have to think about that, not just to read it. You have to think about it. All that is near and dear to me is subject to change and separation. So when you think of that, you have to think of that as a thing that is happening to you. Not just reading like a parrot. That is useless. All that is near and dear to me is subject to change and separation. When these things are changing and separating, all that is left is my emotional state. My emotional states makes me unhappy. By depending on changing external conditions for happiness, I experience sorrow and unhappiness. While not depending on these external conditions for my happiness, I cultivate dispassion, compassion, happiness and tranquility. I gain true happiness. Pleasure is stimulation of the senses. Happiness is a state of mind free from selfish emotions. So it's not just reading that, you have to reflect on your own life. You have to think of whatever you have experienced in the past and whatever you are experiencing now. Compare this to your own experience. Then you go on to think about the job. My job is dependent on conditions. Because it is dependent on conditions, it is unstable. Because it is unstable, it is uncomfortable. Because it is uncomfortable, it is not under my control. Because it is not under my control, it is not mine. Because it is not mine, it is not myself, nor a part of myself. So you have to be thinking about that, not just reading it. Then your social status is dependent on conditions. Because it is dependent on conditions, it is unstable. So you may be feeling that your social status is great, or you may be thinking that it is not great, and you may be unhappy about it. So whatever it is still dependent on conditions. and what is dependent on conditions is unstable. So what is unstable is uncomfortable. So that is how you have to think about it. It is not under your control. Therefore it is not yours. Now what is not yours is not mine, not myself, it is not myself. So you have to keep on thinking about this. That is, meditation is not just concentration. So these are two kinds of meditation that you have been doing. One is to just keep on watching what is going on inside. But this time you are thinking about the realities of life. So if you don't do that, then you can't benefit from the meditation. This is why you have to keep on doing that. So continue that meditation. It's not just reading and throwing it away. You have to be thinking about this. Comparing what you read with your own life. You have to relate it to your life. So you keep on doing that and observe what is happening to you as you keep on thinking about this. You have to go through this whole number of pages. It's not just reading and throwing it away. We have come close to the end of the time for the day. I hope you benefited from the meditation. You have any questions? What is
I
that?
want to know what is the difference between Hetu and Pachaya.
Hetu and
Pachaya.
well, this was a question that came up in Western philosophy also. There were these three philosophers in the United Kingdom, Locke, Berkeley and Hume. It was Locke who pointed out that there was no such thing as a mind. There is only the body. That was the time when science began. He was from England. Oh, good. Thank you. Well, there was another philosopher who came from Ireland. It was a bishop, Berkeley. He said, that is not correct. He said, there is only the mind. There is no such thing as a body. So he said, what we call the body is simply an idea derived from seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. We connect all that and then think of a thing called body. So he said there is only the mind. There is no such thing as a body. So these two philosophers gave ideas that are completely opposed to each other. So there another man came from Scotland. That was Hume. He said, you are both wrong. But partly correct, because one proved that there is no such thing as a mind, and the other person proved that there is no such thing as a body. So he said, there is no mind, there is no body. He said, there is only what is called experience. That is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. That is experience. He also said, there is no such thing as cause and effect. There is no cause and effect. Nothing can cause anything. There are only conditions. When certain conditions are present, something comes into being. When the conditions are absent, it ceases to be. But the conditions are not causing anything. For anything to come to being, conditions are necessary. Not one condition, several conditions. So when we compare this with the teachings of the Buddha, there is a sutra in the Samyutta Nikaya. There the Buddha, that sutra is called Sabba Sutra. Sabba means all. A-L-L, all. And he says, this is the all. The eye and what is seen, the ear and what is heard, the nose and what is smelt, the tongue and what is tasted, the body and what is touched, and then the thinking and what is thought about. So this is quite similar to what Hume was saying. The ideas of Hume was similar to what the Buddha pointed out. So it's important to understand that. But there was another philosopher. He was not from England or Ireland or Scotland. He was also European man from Europe. He didn't like this idea of Hume. So he said, there are two things. He used two words, phenomenon and nomenon. Phenomenon and nomenon. phenomenon is simply what is created by perception and thinking. The perception is mainly it's what is perceived through the eye, ears, nose, tongue. And by thinking you create the object. And that object that is created by thinking is the phenomenon. But he said, so when I look at a chair and say, this is a chair, how do I know that there is a chair there? Because I see it, I can even touch it, or smell it, taste it. And this is why I say there is a chair there. But that chair is created by our thinking. Because I am collecting the information coming from the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and the body. I put them together and say there is a chair there. But it is only a thought, a concept. So that is the phenomenon. But he said, it is true that it is only a thought in the mind, but there must be something there which, when I see, it reflects the light. And when I touch it, there is something there that prevents my hand not going beyond a certain limit. So, although I cannot see it or hear it or do any of those things, but there must be something there that cannot be seen or heard or touched. And that is what he called the nomenon. So he said there are these two things, the phenomenon and the noumenon. But of course, there are other philosophers who came up and said we cannot accept that thing called nomenon. This is created by the mind. We can only speak of the phenomenon. And then these were people like Bertrand Russell and Wittgenstein. These were the two people who began to talk about this. They said, we cannot talk about a thing called truth. What we call truth is a statement. So, there are no truths in the world. There are only statements. And we can only speak of a statement that is meaningful or a statement that is meaningless. A meaningful statement is a statement based on what you see or what you hear or what you smell or what you taste or what you touch. If you speak of something that is not based on what you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, it is a meaningless statement. So if you begin to speak about a god or a devil that you have not seen or heard or smelled, then that is a meaningless statement. So, then another school of philosophy came up. They said, the purpose of human thinking is not to find truth. The purpose of human thinking is to solve problems. So, a person might be able to talk about a problem and its solution. That statement can be verified. You can try that method of solving the problem, and if it solves the problem, then we can call that a truth, because it solves the problem. If it doesn't solve the problem, then it is not a truth. So what can be called truth is the solution to a problem that works. A solution that works. Then another kind of philosophy came up. They said, these various philosophers are talking about various problems, They are unimportant problems. There is only one important problem in the world. That every human being, out of all the animals in the world, it is the human being that is aware of his own existence. They think that they are existing. Not only that, they are also aware that they are going to die. Every person who is born into this world begins to grow old, fall sick, and die. That is the most important problem in the world. But these philosophers spoke about this problem, but they didn't know how to solve it. One of these philosophers was a man named Kierkegaard. He said, can't help, the human mind is not capable of solving that problem. And therefore, we have to take what he called the leap of faith and pray to God to solve that problem. That was his solution. He was a person who criticized, he was a Christian who criticized Christianity. And ultimately he had to accept Christianity because his solution was to get God to help. But there was another man, these are what are called the existentialists. There was another existentialist, his name was Sartre. And he said, there is no other way to solve this problem the only way is he became a Marxist. He wanted to get help from Karl Marx. And he died as a Marxist. But Karl Marx couldn't solve that problem. Although he went to Marxism, but there was another philosopher who pointed out the only way this problem can be solved is by the human mind the human being has to develop the mind to the level of a god. And only by developing this mind that the human being will be able to solve it. Of course, he was not able to solve it, but he pointed out that the human being has to make the effort. But long before these philosophers came into being, it was the Buddha who solved this problem. The problem, how did he solve the problem? That philosopher called Nietzsche, who said that the human being has to develop the mind. And that is what the Buddha did. Long before Nietzsche was born, it was the Buddha who developed the mind to a certain level where he began to realize that the existentialists who brought out the problem or pointed to this problem, they are making a mistake. What is the mistake they are making? The mistake is that they are thinking that they exist. Existence is the mistake. Existence is a static concept in a dynamic reality. What does that mean? That is very important to understand. Static means things are not changing. Now, the past, present, and future, we are thinking of time in the form of a past, present, and future. But past is something that has gone and finished. The past doesn't exist. And the future is something that has not even come. Therefore, the future doesn't exist. Is the present existing? The present is becoming the past every fraction of a second. The present is becoming the past. That means the present is also not existing. So if the past doesn't exist, the present doesn't exist, and the future doesn't exist, how can you talk about existence? Existence is a delusion. That is the meaning of the word Maha. Maha is a delusion. It is because we think we are existing. We are thinking of a past, present and future that exists. As long as we keep on thinking that we are existing, we are suffering. We are thinking of birth, old age and death. We think the past is birth and the future is death, and the present is aging, changing all the time. So the important thing is to understand that we are not existing. If we are not existing, can we die? Before we can die, we have to exist. So if we don't exist, we cannot die. You see? It is only when we are able to see this properly that we become free of the problem of suffering. You understand? You have to awaken from the dream of existence. Awakening from the dream of existence is what is called Samma Sambodhi. A Buddha is the person, Buddha means one who has awakened from the dream of existence.
Bhante, back to the question.
Huh?
Back to the question, what is Hetu, what is Pachaya?
What's that?
The same question, what is Hetu, what is Pachaya?
What are the two words you are saying?
Hetu and Pachaya. Hetu and Pachaya.
Cheto.
Hetu, H-E-T-U.
Hetu.
Yeah, and Pachaya.
Hetu means cause. The word Hetu means cause. Now, I told you, Hume said there is no such thing as a cause. If you say something is a cause, that means that thing caused something else. We are only talking about conditions. So, Hetu Paticca Sambhutang, there, the word Hetu is not a cause. The Hetu is a condition. Hetum Paticca Sambhutam. When the conditions are present, something happens. Huh? Pacha means prati aya. That means before. That is why I use that word antecedent. Antecedent means an incident that is there before. Antecedent is an incident that is before some other incident. Huh? So these are antecedents. Pacha means that prati aya. Prati means before, aya means being there, existence.
So Bhante is not from.
Huh?
It's definitely not from.
What's that?
Pachaya is not from.
No, not from. No.
Some people translate as
Huh?
some translators use from.
No, that is because they are thinking of cause and effect.
Yeah, cause and effect.
Yeah. This is not cause and effect. No.
I think the whole Burmese tradition is cause and effect.
Yeah.
This happened and that happened. This happened and that
Yeah.
happened. And they try to escape from it.
This is why we use the word condition. Now, when you talk about conditions, the Western philosophers talk about what is called a necessary condition. An essential condition. When certain things are present, it becomes a necessary condition for something to happen. Now, for example, if you want to get a flame, you want flame to light your cigarette, or maybe you want a flame to cook something. And so, what you do is, today we have what is called the matchstick. So you strike the match. Now, that striking produces the flame. But if there was no gunpowder or something at the tip of that match, do you think there will be a flame? So that means, it is one of the conditions necessary for the flame to arise. But you can't say that was the cause of the flame coming up. You see? That striking the match is not the cause. Because there were several conditions. You need but if you had the gunpowder there at the tip, but you didn't strike the match, will the flame come up? No. So the match striking is also a necessary condition.
Oxygen also.
Oxygen must be there in the air. So several conditions are necessary for this thing to happen. Not just one condition. So therefore you cannot call it a cause.
So Bhante,
Yeah?
the whole world is looking for reason. They should look.
What's that?
The whole world is looking for reasons. They should look for conditions then, right? Instead of reasons.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a reason. Why it is happening? Why?
There are no causes in this world. Only
They're all conditions.
No causes.
These are all conditions. So,
So even for a murderer,
What's that?
Even for a murderer,
For a?
even for a murderer, killer or a murderer,
Huh?
they should look for the necessary condition rather for the cause.
Somebody is murdered.
Huh? Murder. Ah.
So you should look for necessary conditions for the murder
Yeah.
rather than the cause of the murder.
Yeah.
You've got to rewrite Sherlock Holmes then.
Everything.
Ah.
I mean, even the whole justice system,
Huh?
the whole justice system may have to change in this sort of lights because they're always looking for reasons.
Causes.
Yeah, you are asking for causes,
Yeah, they're always asking.
but there are no causes.
And there are also no doers.
Huh?
There are also no doer.
There is no doer also, yeah. There is no doer.
Then no one who suffers.
Yeah.
In the murder, there is only the murdering.
No victim, no cause.
It's an accumulation of conditions.
Murdering and suffering.
Accumulation of mass.
Yeah.
Mass murder.
So, Bhante, in that case, what is karma then?
Karma simply means that emotion. That emotion, not only the emotion. You see, when the emotion is aroused, like if you are angry, then you express that anger in action, which is fighting or quarreling or whatever you call the action. So the anger, but it is not the anger which is the karma. And the action alone is not the karma. Now, in an animal, there is no karma. The karma, this is why the Buddha said, Chetana ahang bhikkhave kammang vadami. That means Chetana is the karma. What that means is, when the anger comes up, the human being has the ability to stop acting on the anger. But the animals can't do that. This is because the thinking part, mano, comes in and says, no, don't do that. That has bad consequences. So you go and work somewhere and the boss says something or does something and you are angry. You can't go and fight with the boss. If you fight with the boss, you'll be thrown out of your job. So that means you keep quiet, you decide not to act on that anger. Maybe you go home and fight with your wife. Yeah, but the important thing is that yeah, you have decided not to act on that situation. So that decision is the Chetana. So it is the karma really comes from the Chetana, your decision, which is done by the mano, not the chitta. Chitta is the emotional agitation, which leads to the action part.
So, Bhante, in this regard, do we have sin or papa?
What?
Is there anything called sin as
Christianity, sin.
I didn't understand that. Huh?
The concept of sin. Do we have sin?
Sin.
Yeah. Are we sinners?
Well, the word sin is coming from this Christianity. You see, sin is... Huh?
In Pali they use papa.
Huh?
In Pali they use papa, punya and papa.
Papanse.
Papasa.
Papanse ko sa papasa.
The root word.
What is the Bhava?
Sabba papasa akarana.
Huh?
Sabba papasa akarana.
Papa. You are talking about Papa.
Is papa sin?
Papa. There are two things. Kusala, akusala, papa. Yeah. Punya and papa. Those are the two. The important thing is, these are really synonyms. These are not two different things. But today there are some monks who take these two as two different things. But the Buddha says, Sabba papassa akarana, kusalassa upasampada. Now there he is using the word kusala and papa. So papa is the same thing as akusala. You see that? So there is no real distinction between kusala and punya and papa and akusala. You understand?
Can papa create bad karma?
Huh?
Can papa create bad karma?
Papa is the bad karma.
Bhante,
Huh?
traditionally we understand that even an animal also can commit or do some evil action. So according to Bhante saying no karma for the animals. I don't know if I understood properly.
Yeah, if there is no chetana for the animal, but still that action will have bad results.
Yes, animals
Huh?
have hiri otapa.
What's that?
Do animals have hiri and otapa?
What's that?
Animals, like dog, sometimes when they do something wrong and the owner scolds them, is that considered hiri and otapa in the dog?
No, the animals also will have that same thing. They are not able to control anything. They can be trained to avoid certain things, and that is related to certain things like say when the dog sees someone unknown, they begin to bark, you say. So, but the animal can also be trained not to bark. So it's just a training. They are not able to think properly and understand certain things and make decisions. This is the thing.
What about the Jataka stories?
Huh?
What about the Jataka stories? The Bodhisattva
What?
Jataka stories?
Jataka stories, you can't take them seriously because Jataka story, it's like for children, you see. Mainly they are the animals talking and things like that. Yeah. Those are just stories. But there are some real Jataka stories also. But not all Jataka stories.
Bhante,
Huh?
can akusala karma be reversed?
What?
Can akusala karma be reversed, or you have to suffer? Because some
Akusala karma.
because
Yeah?
some traditions, like in other, like you just do a pilgrimage and everything is wiped out.
What akusala karma causing rebirth?
No. Can they be reversed?
Huh?
Can akusala karma be reversed?
Oh, reversed. I see.
Some people think they put a few more joysticks, extra joystick, all this, it's no more
No,
sin.
it's not a matter of reverse. It's a matter of neutralizing, you might say.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Is it possible to
Now, if you